What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the 5-7 podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pre, and today we're going to be talking about Master Sergeant Matthew Williams, who was recently awarded the Medal of Honor. It is Veterans Appreciation Month, which is something that I can get behind. And I'm going to give you a tech tip on when to update your devices. Here we go. So, I have an article here from the Army Times, and it's gonna talk about how Matthew Williams was awarded the Medal of Honor, what he did for it, and I'm just gonna get right into it. The nation's highest combat medal will be awarded to a Green Beret who fought up a mountain while under intense enemy fire to help rescue 4 wounded members of his team pinned down by gunfire. The battle took place April 6, 2008 in Shock Valley, Afghanistan, during a joint U.S.-Afghan raid to kill or capture Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, the leader of the former Hezbollah Islami Gulbuddin militia that is now an Afghan political party following a peace agreement. Master Sergeant Matthew Williams previously received the Silver Medal for his actions while serving as a weapons sergeant with Special Forces Operational Detachment Alpha 3336 during the raid. President Donald Trump awarded Williams an upgrade to the Medal of Honor on October 30th, the White House announced in a press release Thursday morning. During the 2008 raid, Williams ODA and their Afghan commando partner force infiltrated into Nuristan's province, Shock Valley, via a CH-47 Chinook helicopter. The terrain was too steep to land the aircraft, so the men leaped out while it hovered and took a 10-foot drop into a river. Their mission was to hike up a near-vertical 60-foot mountain face and capture Hekmatyar, who was supposed to be in a compound at the top. However, the austere valley and sheer cliffs erupted with sniper machine gun and rocket-propelled grenade fire from multiple peaks not long after the soldiers disembarked their aircraft. During the ensuing fight, a group of U.S. soldiers was pinned down with wounded. In the face of rocket-propelled grenade, sniper, and machine gun fire, Sergeant Williams led an Afghan commando element across a fast-moving, ice-cold, and waist-deep river to fight its way up a terraced mountain to the besieged load element of the assault force. The Medal of Honor announcement reads, Sergeant Williams then set up a base of fire that the enemy was not able to overcome. When his team sergeant was wounded by a sniper, Williams exposed himself to enemy fire to come to his aid and to move him down the mountainside to the casualty collection point. Williams again braved small arms fire and climbed back up the cliff to evacuate other injured soldiers and repair the team's satellite radio. He then helped move several casualties down the near vertical mountainside as he carried and loaded casualties onto evacuation helicopters. Williams' actions helped save the lives of 4 critically wounded soldiers and prevented the lead element of the assault force from being overrun by the enemy. The U.S. military claims that more than 115 insurgents were killed during the roughly 7-hour gunfight. Now, there was also another Medal of Honor recipient from this same battle, Staff Sergeant Ronald Schur II, and he was a Special Forces medic during the battle. And there was also a Air Force combat controller, Master Sergeant Zachary Reiner, who got the Air Force Cross for his actions there as well. And I'll get into these other 2 stories another time, but I wanted to just talk about Sergeant Williams, Master Sergeant Williams. A lot of the stories of these battles do not come out to the public, and a lot of people don't know what these men do to earn these medals. And a lot of times the Medal of Honor goes to individuals who don't necessarily make it out alive. And it's nice to hear that there are guys that are getting awarded the medal that fully deserve it, that are still alive, and it's really humbling to know that there's men out there that have done these things, and that they're good to emulate, the selflessness of being willing to carry down the wounded to get them evacuated so they don't die on on a mountainside in Afghanistan is incredibly heroic, and definitely worth emulating if you're looking to go into the armed services, and to be admired if you are not in the armed services and want to know about these people. Now, during this month, I'm going to be doing each week. This week was Matthew O. Williams. I'm going to be doing each week for the month of November a veteran that has done something that should be put out there. So this week was him, and I've got 3 more weeks, obviously, for the month of November that I'm going to get into. And I may look to get an interview with someone if I can get someone. If I can't, then oh well. So today's tech tip is going to be on when to update your devices. Now, it's pretty popular that that each year, or every few months, you get on your device or on your laptop or on your tablet, you get queued up to install updates. Now, some updates are different than others. You have updates, say for instance for your Macs, that are, I would say, annual updates for, like, say when you update the OS to one major step. So say last year was macOS Mojave, this year was macOS Catalina. In between, there are small incremental updates that help with bug fixes and help with little things, little problems that come up that the update team fixes that gets put out. So for the smaller ones, I would say to update those immediately and get those installed, because a lot of times they fix there are functionality and service and security fixes. I would have those done immediately. For the major ones, say like Mojave and Catalina, I would wait maybe a month, or wait until that they have come up with at least an incremental update after the first initial update, so that some of the bugs get ironed out, so that you don't experience some of the bugginess of when a brand new OS comes out. For Windows, on the other hand, they used to put out updates via there'd be a major one, say like Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, Windows 10. Recently, with Windows 10, they've been doing it much differently. They would have a spring update and they would have a fall update. Now, each of these updates were huge, and they would add it would require a full install in April, and then it would require another full install in the fall. What they're going to be doing going forward is the update that is happening in the springtime is going to be a full update. That's going to be a big one that needs to be installed. And then in the fall, it's going to be what's called a cumulative update, that you don't need to do a full Windows update for it. It'll just you just download it, it installs, and that'll be it. For the big update that comes in the springtime, I would probably wait a month before it's installed, because that comes there's usually some bugs with that as well. Wait a month or two and then install it, and then when the new update comes in the fall, that should be able to be installed immediately, because they're mostly just going to be bug fixes and security updates. Now, each month they have it used to be called a Patch Tuesday. It is now they're releasing updates more and more often. I have found over the past maybe 6 months, 8 months, they have been releasing more updates more often, and not just on Patch Tuesday. So when these updates come out, I would definitely install those immediately. These smaller updates, install those immediately. Now, when it comes to your smartphones, if you have an Android phone, normally there is what I have found on my Note 8, they have a monthly update that gets released, an Android security patch. And I would do those immediately as soon as those come out, because we obviously, everybody uses their phones quite often, and those updates I think are very important. For the bigger updates, for the feature updates, it's very dependent. Android depends on what kind of phone that you have. If you have one of the newer phones, for instance, you'll probably have Android 9 on it. Android 10 is going to be coming out pretty soon. It's already out if you have a Pixel. if you have a Pixel phone. If you have any other phone, there are going to be a little bit of a time before they get the Android 10 update, because the manufacturers have to, they have to toy around with it with their phones, and then they release them individually to those phones. So those feature updates for the mobile phones, they normally come out whenever the manufacturers decide, like Samsung, Huawei, they release those, whenever they're done beta testing them. And a lot of them, they only give you a 2-year cycle for your phone. So say if you buy a Note 8 and you get Android, you get the Android 8 update, you get Android 9, it doesn't look like we're going to be getting Android 10. If you have an iPhone, those are normally supported for about 5 years. So you can do the value towards, which phone gives you more value. If you get an iPhone and it gives you 5 years of support, or you get an Android phone and you'll get 2 years of feature upgrade supports. So I have an Android. I may be looking to go back to iPhone just because you can keep them longer for a longer period of time, get the feature updates, and they're worth a little bit more. So that's kind of what I have for you. And tablets, the iPads, they get their updates. The same thing with the iOS updates. They have iPadOS now, so that is normally being thrown out there with the iOS updates. And with those, same thing, major upgrades, I would wait a little bit before you kind of get the all clear that there's no bugs, and then install the feature upgrades. With the small incremental upgrades, say for instance like the 13.1, 13.2, 13.1.1, I would install those immediately. And for the Microsoft Surface, it's the same thing with the Windows releases. They fall under the same Windows releases. They get major ones in the spring, and then a smaller one in the fall, and they get very small incremental updates as the year, security patches as the year goes on. So that's what I would do for your updates, for your update cycle, depending on what you have. If you need to rewind it, go on ahead and or if you have any questions, send me a message. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have if you have any update questions. One thing that I would not do is I would not wait on the major updates for too long. So say you're on iOS 12, and obviously there's iOS 12.1, iOS 12.2, 12.3, and 12.4 comes out. When you start getting to iOS 13, 13.1, 13.2, you don't want to go so long that you have like 5 updates that you have to do to get to the newest version, because when you do that, there could be major problems with your upgrades. Like you could be experiencing serious serious issues, like maybe messages aren't sending properly. Your photos may somewhat be disorganized. I've heard from issues. You may have issues with phone calls. And this is because when you have these smaller updates, they come onto a smaller piece and they like add on to it. When you have a update and then you want to put the bigger update on top of it, there's more changes, more bigger changes that happen that could lead to more issues. So if you are on, say, 12.1 and 12.3 is out, I would do the 12.3 immediately so that you're not having to play catch up on your updates. Some people, they like to wait a long time and then they update and then they have big problems and then they kind of blame it on the updates. I kind of blame it on, I blame it on the update plan than necessarily the updates themselves. And also, before you do updates, clean up your machine or your tablet or your phone. If you have apps on there that you are not using, get rid of them. If you have apps on there that that are taking up a lot of space and you're not using it, get rid of them. And also download a software that will kind of clear out your cache a little bit. On my Mac, I use Clean My Mac. I went over that last week. They have a Clean My Mac, and they have a CC Cleaner, and they have CC Cleaner for your mobile phones as well, and it works pretty well. I use it on my Note 8, and it works fine. iPhones, for the most part, they don't really need them because they do a pretty good job of clearing that stuff up themselves. But if you do have an iPhone or an iPad, get rid of apps that you're not using, and clean it up a little bit before you put your big updates on there. And I think that would help out. So, like I said earlier, if you have any questions, let me know. Get back to me on Instagram at 57podcast, Twitter at 57podcast, Facebook at 57podcast, and email me at mjp@57podcast.com if you have any questions. Thank you very, very much for listening. I'm very, very appreciative. And take it easy, guys. This is Pre, out.